That's that.
Please do a favor.
What bridges? Just type in bridges. It's the easiest way to get there.
Not on, but not here, right? Not in Chrome.
Yeah.
Oh, I can do it there?
Do in Chrome, yeah.
I thought we weren't supposed to use that.
No.
Hi, Becky. All right. We have a few people that are not going to be with us this evening. That they normally are here, but they're going to be online for various reasons because they don't want to get you sick.
Click on the bar. And just type in bridges. Yep, bridges. There we go. Dot. Yep, good. Coming up at mobile.
That's weird.
Click no.
Huh.
Scroll all the way down. And switch to full.
That's better. It's reorganized. All these steps. Nope, wrong one. Hi, hi, Allie.
Hello?
Hi, how are you?
I'm good.
Is this Allie?
Wafa. No, Wafa?
So we have Wafa, Becky, Allie, and we'll see who else comes online. Oh, well, I'm not sure.
At the bottom of the screen.
I thought I just clicked.
Yeah, no, this one here. Minimize this window. It looks like it's behind it.
Yes, it is.
And close out of this window. There you go.
There we go. Okay. All right. Two things before we get started tonight. First, I'd like to introduce you to Kelly Nevins. Kelly is one of our leadership students. She's working on her capstone. She's going to be graduating in May. And the other is just going to let her tell you why she's here and what she's doing. And Russ, do you have a few minutes, or do you have to leave?
Nope, I've got
right.
30 minutes.
Good, then Kelly, the floor is yours.
Quick. Okay, so part of my graduation requirement is that I do a capstone project, and it's a research project. And what I am doing is a flyer on equal pay for equal work, which is something that was developed by the Women's Fund of Rhode Island. If any of you happen to watch the Oscars this week, you might have heard one of the actresses, the actress who won the supporting actress.
Patricia Arquette.
Patricia Arquette. She talked about what the concept of equal pay for equal work is. What I'm going to do is ask if you would be willing to help me out. And you would, first of all, fill out a consent form saying that you're allowing me to do this research with you. And you'll look at the flyer that I pass out, and then you'll answer some questions on the survey. And it should take you no more than 10 minutes. It would be immensely helpful to me for my research. It's not required by you, but hopefully somebody will do the same thing for you when it comes time for you to do your capstone research, and you need to run around and get people to participate. So is there anybody here who would be willing to help me out? Thank you. Yes? Thank you. Did you do this in Dr. Hall's class? Yes. Okay, all right, thank you. If you've already done it, then thank you, and you don't need to do it again.
You can do it, you need the numbers.
No, but I would like to do this ethically.
Yeah,
I hear
sure.
that's what this class is about, so. Thank you so much. If you would just take a few minutes you'll need to sign the consent form and then look at the flyer. Yes, over you as well. Thank you. I need to get 100 participants in this, so different participants. So it was Dr. Menton's class?
Yes, Chris Menton, he's teaching a graduate class in criminal justice.
Okay.
And he's in room 212. Okay. And I know he's expecting you to come earlier.
I somehow didn't have that on my calendar.
Oh,
on my radar.
because
It's fine for me to do it. I
okay.
just didn't know about it. So
Well,
I'm glad you mentioned it.
yeah, so I mean, take advantage of the
Yeah.
night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna take me a while to get up to 100, but I visited Dr. Hall's class the other day, there were 7 people there. so.
Yeah, and one of the things I was a little concerned about was the spring break this month.
Mhm.
So, anyway,
I appreciate whatever help you
Yeah.
can do. Yep, thank you. Yep. Well, people have been in the same class, yeah. I'm gonna come to the leadership event next week too, and Jane said I could have a table there. And this one, I could do. Yeah.
so the first part is just listening to
Right. And then we have a class after that, at night. So typically, I don't know. I had it on the calendar for some reason. I would remember that on the class, so Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Yeah, that's talking there. So that's tomorrow. Okay. And I also have these electronic documents, and for people who are online, who might be willing to take this, because it's the same thing, it just, I think, that we could do that. In fact, you probably just talk to them now.
Sure. The stand in front of us.
So, I don't know where the microphone, okay. For those of you who are online tonight, my name is Kelly Nevins, and I'm going to have Dr. Norvell either post in the online forum or send to you directly the documents that I've handed out in class. If you're willing to help out, it'll take you about 10 minutes to look at the flyer that I have presented for my research and respond to some questions for that. And I'll put my email address in there, and if you feel like you're able to help out, it would be great to have you fill it out, then scan it, and email it back to me. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Okay, somebody said,
Oh.
Wafa said okay.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Ally. And Becky said she'll take a look also. And Katie is arrived. Yeah.
I'll know what she is. By the way, I'm happy to take the flyers back. You don't have to keep them, but if you want them, I'm happy to let you keep it as well. So,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, that's fine. Form here too.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's very important for me to get both. Oh, that's interesting. Feels as if I've given everybody a test.
Dr. Norvell, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, this is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
Hi. Is there any way that we can see the class or see you? Or I can see your PowerPoint, but I can't see the class. Is that an option? Do you know?
Yes, it is. It's an option. I thought I had turned on show my screen.
No, the other one, the left, the left, yep, that gray button on the left.
Oh,
Yep, that one. Okay. Give it a sec.
okay.
There you go.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's better.
That's good.
Okay, you can't see everybody, but we'll shift it around from
Oh,
time.
that's great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Right now, what they're doing is one of our graduate leadership students is here. He has passed out a survey as part of her capstone on her project, and so the students, some who have voluntarily agreed to participate, are doing that right now. If you would also like to participate, just let me know, and we can make sure you can get a survey and just do it and scan it and send it back. So it's totally your choice.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is that everybody? Oh, thanks. Okay, thank you, Dr. Norvell.
Thank you, Kelly, in room 212.
Yep, on my way.
Thank you, class, for those of you who were willing to participate in that, because at some point you will be doing your own surveys or similar type of capstone experience, and it takes a while to get about 100 cases. So. All right, so I'm going to turn the class over to Russ for a few minutes. If any of you have questions, tech questions, or anything at all that you'd like to talk to them about.
Anybody online have any questions for me? Bridges, Panopto, portfolio, blah.
Well, I'm good.
You might want to explain, especially to the folks online, about the issues that we've been having with virtual recording. Because we've had some inquiries as to where is the recording?
Well, that issue has been resolved.
Okay,
I uploaded last night's today.
so but if they weren't aware of the issue, I'm not sure that this class, because we got snowed out.
Right. Yeah, there was an issue with GoToMeeting, which has been resolved. They basically remoted into our system and did an update to the converter and all this kind of stuff. So I had to reprocess all the videos that we had recorded since the first day of class.
Do you want to do a public service announcement for your summer class also? The one you and Dr. Holland?
Health information,
Well,
health informatics.
yeah, just because.
So it's Wednesday nights.
You on the health track. Are you all public management side, or are you health administration side? No health administration?
Well, we're doing a health informatics course, Dr. Hall and I, Wednesdays in over the summer, all summer or summer 1, 2.
It's 10 weeks.
So the whole summer. It'll be on health information systems, databases, and things of that nature. It's a pretty cool course, actually. I do the database side of things, and he does the more data analysis side of things. So you'll get both of those types of abilities when you leave the course. So it's kind of cool. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to be healthcare administrators or healthcare providers. Any database experience is great experience from my point of view, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's applicable to whatever, so it's a matter of knowing how to
But
navigate
it's going to be their own credit union.
it and change it over to what you putting it into SPSS.
Yeah, so we'll use Access mostly. I mean, that's not the preferred method of database design. You want something that's much more scalable, like SQL or MySQL. Again, crap talk, but you'll learn about that there. But then we extract that data and actually perform an inferential analysis on some sort of sample, some sort of population. Last year we did, it was dummy data, but we're not going to use dummy data this year. It was something to do with, in the newspaper, you read that there has been an increase in prescriptions of painkillers in a specific area of Rhode Island. And so we, here's the data, and you guys have to put in the database, do a lot of data extraction, and then bring it into SPSS to analyze the data. And what they found was that there was, in fact, an increase in prescriptions of painkillers for common cold and things of that nature. So it's pretty neat.
Russ,
Yeah.
is there anything scraping against the microphone?
I'm sorry, is there anything what?
Is there anything scraping against the microphone?
No, I have it in my hand.
Okay, it's really, really scratchy. I just didn't know.
Yikes. Is it still scratchy now?
No, not right at this moment. No.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right. It's really static.
Do we have to put the holding the mic?
Well, let me see something here. Okay. Tell me how it is now. I just disabled it and re-enabled it.
Kelly says it's better now.
Okay, good.
That is great, yeah.
All right, cool.
Good, thanks.
Mhm.
Good, and also, how many of you have already had 503? Research methods. Okay. The only reason I was saying that is Dean Manzi is considering doing like a review workshop this term, especially helpful for people who are working on their capstones. It's like Kelly's she's collecting her data. She's probably had 503 a couple of years ago, and she's probably going to stare at SPSS and go, uh-oh, what do I do? Or where do I begin? And so anyway, I'm just thinking for those of you who have maybe already had 503 or you're already familiar with SPSS but you feel a little rusty, we're just trying to generate some interest so that we can have one of our professors in Bristol who basically teaches research methods exclusively come up and do like a refresher course. I think that will help. We're going to try to do it every term so that, if you're not interested at this point, at some point you might be. And then if there's anything else.
I think we're doing Qualtrics too, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to do a workshop for whoever wants to attend on Qualtrics. It's a robust and industry standard survey tool, and it's really, really cool. And they use it lots and lots of places, and you'll see it out in the field when you get out and work.
Yeah, maybe your own organization uses it. So instead of coming and doing a paper survey like Kelly just did, you might want to do a survey online. If you choose to do a survey, And Qualtrics was what we use at Roger Williams, it's what
Mhm.
other organizations, you've probably heard of SurveyMonkey. Well, Qualtrics is, we consider a better instrument because you can actually dump it into SPSS much easier than having to retype everything into SPSS from SurveyMonkey.
Yeah.
Is there an email or do you send out information?
Yep, we'll send it out. Yeah, I'm thinking of doing it maybe the week after you guys get back from spring break.
We have spring break?
Oh, do you? I don't know.
Yes, there is, well, I know it seems weird, but when you're working, do you actually get a spring break? No. But do you get a spring break from your courses? Yes. And that will be the second week in March. So there will be no classes that week. So yes, you have to go to work. And if you live in Rhode Island or Massachusetts or somewhere in this area, your kids, if you have them, and they're going to school, they just had their February break, and I guess they're going to get another one in April. So they don't sync up with university spring break or other school districts have theirs in March. So anyway, but yeah, so at least you won't have to come to class. I'm sure you'll be busy writing papers and things like that, but at least you won't have to show up for class that week.
Yeah.
What you just said, is that like a class and you would have to register?
Nope. It's a workshop, so maybe it'll be about a 2-hour training session. You just come and you're done. I'm gonna, we're looking at the week after or the week after that of when you get back from spring break, so the 3rd or 4th week in March. Yeah, or it can be, it'll be both, like we do here. Oh, no, of course not. No, you guys are already students. Yeah. It's not difficult software. It's like some of you are going to get it in a half hour, others it'll take a couple hours just to, because there's different types of questions, matrices, Likert scales, and like different options and how to organize the data in it. So, but I think you're really going to like it because it makes it so darn easy, and you all get free accounts because you're students here. We have a site license, so you can use it for free.
And can they access that through the cloud also, or is that how they?
Oh, they don't need the cloud. It's all web based. It's cloud in and of itself. So.
Great.
That's in the summer, yeah.
That's the cost.
That's the class in the summer, right? The Qualtrics software is a workshop that I'm one time only. Well, one time now, in 3 weeks or whatever, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You'll get an email, and I'll make it convenient for all of you, and you can attend online, and we'll record it in case you want to watch the video.
And hopefully we can get that SPSS review workshop also sometime in March, because otherwise it's not going to be beneficial to any student who's working on their capstone.
Mhm. Four. Oh, what is health informatics? Is it 514?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the number is.
We'll get it out. You'll get an email or.
I don't know if it's a 550 number.
Yeah, I forget myself.
I think it might be in the 550s. I think the health side are the 550s, and then the like.
Yeah, I feel like it ends in 4.
215, those are the public management.
I feel like it ends in 4, so it might be PA 554.
554.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
You good?
All right. Very good.
All right,
Thank
cool.
you so much. All right.
Microphone, so it looks like something chewed through this.
Oh.
That might be what they're hearing.
Oh, are you guys hearing the ruffle noises? Okay, good. Yeah, we have Band-Aids on the microphone. All right, so a couple more things. Mrs. Flora was just here a second ago to drop off a flyer for our event next week. This is the second in the colloquium event for our leadership and public service speaking series. And we encourage you to come if you can. It's going to be in this room, actually, on Wednesday, the 4th of March. And there will be refreshments. There will be food, as usual. So should be interesting. Mhm. So, Professor Sean Hensler from the U.S. Navy War College, College of Operational and Strategic Leadership, is going to be speaking. He's going to be giving his insights on education and leadership for the public good. You have that ready? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. Oops. Also, a couple things to mark down on your calendars if you haven't already. The next, the third in the series is our huge May 6th event. It's our, what we call our summit, Leadership Summit. And so we have invited guests from ASPA, the American Association for Public Administrators. Some of you are members of that. We also have guest speakers from other universities that come, and we have a presentation from the two high schools that we work with, Shea High School and Tolman High School. Those kids, seniors, will be inducted into ASPA, and they're going to be presenting what they've been working on all year long, which is basically they've been using a software program working with Russ, taking an asset in their town of Pawtucket and reconfiguring it in such a way that would be an improvement. So that should be interesting to see. At least that's one of the projects. So there's a couple projects. In addition to that event, so we have the
That's May 6th.
that's May 6th, and it's all day, and it's held at it's in Bristol, but it's not on the main campus. It's at
Is that one of Portsmouth?
Yeah, it's at what do we call that place?
Bay Point Inn Conference Center.
Yeah, that's it, Bay Point. Right? No, Bay Point. That's Boston.
It was the Bay Point, now they call it the Roger Williams.
Okay, but you know what I'm talking. So it's part of the year they use it for dorms. Part of the year they use it like a hotel room for.
It's on Anthony Road.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
One thing we did last year is that we did some of it in the afternoon to the campus.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that's part of the plan, but it probably is because they're going to be here for a couple days. And then I don't know how many of you are aware that George is going to be accompanying Dr. Hall to ASPA this year. And what is your honor? What you're the time? Yeah, so he received one of the Founders Fellowships that ASPA offers. And I know there's going to be a presentation. Do you have to make a speech or do you have to?
It's a presentation on paper.
Okay, so what is your research paper about?
Managing the multi-generational workforce. The topic of the essay for the award was public service in the 21st century. So what it was managing the multi-generational workforce, specifically the millennial generation, managing the millennial generation.
Excellent topic. And I'm not sure. Is it going to be picked up? Is it going to be published?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, I hope so. You'll have your first
I don't know if it's that
publication.
good, but-
Well, it was good enough to get you one of the fellowships. So anyway, that's a very nice recognition, and congratulations on that. All right. Well, let's get started on today's topics. Remember, just in case you forgot where you're at, you're in ethics, in public administration. I know sometimes it feels like we don't need enough. All right, so I want to start out just a little bit by touching on the questions, the form questions from Module 2 that I posted. And the first one was I had you look at Chapter 4, some of the cases, and then I wanted you to apply the unified ethic. So there were various questions in each of those ethical perspectives to look at. And then so the second thing that I had to do in the second question was look at how you answered answered the questions using those perspectives, but then kind of reflecting on, well, would I have made the same decision? Would I have approached the case differently if I didn't have that unified ethic, those questions to use as a guide? So anybody want to share what you included in the forums? Because I don't want to like pick on people, so it's better to volunteer. Yeah. Oh, that was your hand, right? You kind of went. Mhm. Mhm.
So I would have preferred to just take the time and ensure that there's some evaluation of the quality and then putting everything else at risk. Just so
You know, one of the things that you might have realized right off the bat when you were doing this exercise was that oftentimes when you have to make a decision in your workplace, you don't have the luxury of time to go through a whole set of questions. So, you know, depending on the situation, I mean, true ethical dilemmas where you've really got, you know, two valid, there are two sets of legitimate values that are conflicting with one another, you do have some time. Oftentimes you don't have to make a quick decision and you can really reflect on it, but that's not the case. I mean, sometimes you have a real ethical dilemma or situation that requires immediate action. So I think the point is, if you get into the practice, I think that's one of the you know, the underlying points of this book, is to get people in the habit, the practice of asking these questions from all of these different perspectives. So, you know, from a Kantian perspective, you know, looking at how consistent you can be. From a utilitarian perspective, you know, who's going to benefit? You know, is it just going to be a small group? Is it going to be the large number? You know, how is this going to, you know, increase, the word is happiness and utilitarianism, but basically, who's going to be pleased by this? Who's not going to be pleased? And then, you know, what does your gut tell you? You know, intuitively, how does it feel? You know, does it sit right with you? Does it not sit right with you? And then, you know, kind of thinking, how would someone that I, you know, look to or expect to make right decisions, those virtues, what would be some of the things that they would use to make that decision? So kind of, you know, looking at virtues and values, your gut, you know, kind of instinctively, how does that guide you? You kind of your inner compass, your moral compass, and then kind of using some of the more traditional theoretical models and kind of putting them together instead of just doing what typically has been done in public administrations, is to take kind of a utilitarian approach, saying, okay, I need to make a decision that's going to benefit the most number of people, you know, do the least harm, and certainly do the least harm to me. But that kind of reductionism doesn't always take into consideration other things that can like really go a lot deeper and have the best outcome. Anybody else choose a different case? Yeah, Eddie.
I chose the FBI case.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I chose the FBI case is because to me it seemed very similar to the case that we discussed and training in this particular case, how much we discussed in the literature that the director really had a high level he had a technology put onto the reference librarian, and to letting them know, that confidentiality is something that really definitely dependent on them. I feel that the reference librarian was put into a situation,
Mm-hmm.
kind of pressured into the situation to give up the information. I feel that the FBI should have been able to wait or try different ways to contact the director, but because they were there at that time and they kind of found that vulnerability in the reference librarian, they just were not at that information they wanted.
So I thought that was an interesting case. How many of you read the FBI case? Yeah, with the, kind of putting pressure on the librarian. If you were the librarian, what do you think you would have done? You wouldn't have given it up.
Unless, of course, if it was, looking at this case the way it was, I wouldn't give up the information. Knowing that you're risking a whole lot, and especially your job. Now, if it was a life or death situation, then I would definitely pursue them into looking for ways to contact the director and have them give them the information.
Okay, anybody else?
It's the FBI, and I'm not in that situation right now. So.
Yeah,
The
Linda.
only issue I would have, I did the same one, is it is the FBI's job to try to get information. So they are going to put pressure, even if it's just, as a mom, I could go in there and go, hey, as my duty, what books did my kids take out? I want to know what's going on. So whoever's going in asking, they're going to put the pressure on.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's a job of the agency, the library, to train their personnel. We're the public servants. We have to know. So you need to be prepared for that high pressure.
Yes.
So they can do whatever they want. Somersaults. How are you going to handle them doing all those things? And then, and with that, my answer was, with the Patriot Act, law enforcement does not need a warrant, but they do need to know who are they investigating. So my argument for that was they did not provide that information. They were on a fishing expedition. So even if it was terrorists, or I even gave an example of, you have to read so many things into these cases, what if it was a terrorist? It wasn't just a theft, or these amateurs were terrorists trying to get books to sell them to get weapons. But even in that case, the FBI still would have to provide you with a name. They can't just get a whole list, because then you're putting everyone here in jeopardy because we all took our books out. So, sorry.
Okay. Is it Abel?
I did that case, and the rationale behind my ethical decision stems from the fact that we as public members should base our choice or judgment in balancing between compliance and judgment. And being ethical is also, we should also buttress traditional normal accountability according to the text, page 8.
Mm-hmm.
So after that, the case was criminal in nature against the library, against the community, and against the state. And then the federal agent, as direct representative of the state, needed all important information to be able to bring the criminal to justice. So I believe the librarian, after he consulted his boss in line with the policy, and then he could no longer get him, he was the next in line. He needed to make such a decision, and I think he based a decision on trying to balance between compliance and endorsement, and then using his moral objective, giving all those information, which was in a greater good of the public.
Okay. Anybody have a different take? All right. So what do you think in general of, because, this book is, the unified ethic, this is the theme of this book, and kind of looking at all of these perspectives, because the message is that we operate on all four of these levels, really. But we don't necessarily consider them or practice them in any kind of methodological way to make our decisions. We maybe have, we tend to lean on one or the other as our, kind of our go-to way to make decisions, ethical decisions. But the message is we actually have all of these considerations as part of our arsenal of decision making, and really as human beings, it's part of our makeup as well. So.
One thing that you don't know about everyone else, but in companies, you always have the sexual harassment, all these things you have to sign off. I read these policies, I did this, and they all joke, and especially, after some of these lessons that we have to take, of course, if it's sexual harassment, we all joke around and say things to each other. Until something happens, somebody puts a suit, draws a suit because somebody said something or they did something ethically wrong, and then I think it comes to light. You don't realize it till after a situation has happened or you read it in the paper. So from this, you're working in a library. What would you need to do? I have to check out books. I have to help someone, log out things. Maybe that person was only there for a few months and, oh, you didn't get your training, but get it in within the next 6 months or something.
Yeah.
So in that case, when we're in class, it makes you think, wow, now I understand why we need that training.
Good point. All right. Let's see if this is going to work. All right. Okay, so in chapter 3 and then 4 and 5, we were looking at this thing called the unified ethic. So just to kind of review, what is it? It takes into account the unity of human nature from a rational, emotional, instinctive, and virtue basis. So rational would be, the Kantian, the categorical imperative, saying that, you need to apply a very consistent way. You would always choose the same rationale to make a decision consistently every time. So there's, this idea that there's a universal truth in the way that you would make a decision and using that particular principle. The emotional part has to do with the utilitarian perspective that says you want to do you would want to make a decision that would benefit the greatest number of people. So it's about, how can I, in my decision making, invoke happiness for the greatest number of people and do the least amount of harm. The instinctive part has to do with, kind of our intuitive nature. What does our gut tell us? Or just, what is it that just doesn't smell right, doesn't feel right? The FBI case, just on, you can't, it's hard to really get a lot out of a small, it's a short case, so you're trying to read things into it. But just on the surface, to me, it didn't feel right. There was this pressure. It's like, it's being like a high pressure salesperson, not allowing you to really kind of think it through, just kind of, pushing through. So that didn't feel right to me. But there were other things to consider, obviously. And then the virtue basis. So, what are those underlying values that we all have? What are those particular character traits that says, yeah, that's, you think of individuals and you say this is a person that leads a good moral life. And that doesn't mean morality in a religious sense, but just, that they make the right decisions, that they have values that resonate in their personal life as well as their professional life, and they're consistent in both ways. The unified ethic, it combines our need for consistency and the appeal for rationality. I've just kind of said this from the Kantian perspective, our desire for happiness and the emotional fulfillment for promoting the greatest good, and utilitarianism, and then our instinctive desire for and appreciation of excellence through character traits. And I think excellence is an important word because we know it when we see it, right? It's excellence in professionalism, people doing their job, and their academic work, whatever it might be. It's easy to see. Not always easy to describe, but you know it when you see it. And then each element is interconnected and provides a more comprehensive framework for ethical decision making, which is basically the key theme of this book, that it's all interconnected and that any one perspective has its pros, but it also has its cons, and that's what we looked at last time we met. So there's weaknesses inherent in each ethical perspective, but when you combine them, you actually have a really good interconnected way for making decisions. Okay, so I thought you might enjoy this part where, most of us work in public organizations, but even if you don't, even if you work in a private organization, by virtue of the fact that most organizations, public or private, nonprofit, are structured similarly, they have some inherent pathologies. So I've got some listed, and we're going to talk about some of the pathologies that are inherent in your organizations. So one of the things that we talk about a lot, and we talk about this in org theory as well as, in a class like this as ethics, is that there's a disconnect between espoused values, so the things that we say that we believe in, the things that, we put up on the wall, this is our mission statement, this is who we are, and the actual values, so basically the lived values, the way we actually conduct ourselves as an organization, and the way that we conduct ourselves as individuals within that organization. So this is not something that's an anomaly, right? I mean, I know some of you have talked about this disconnect in your organizations and other classes. So can you give me some examples of maybe in your organization? Yes.
So I mentioned that Commander is launching the badging program. So our mission is really just to meet diverse student needs. I think we do that in a variety of ways, but there's some external pressure to get this badging program up and running and to have, all 60 ELO students badged with something by the end of the year. And we have our administrators meeting with United Way and, promoting this idea that we will probably accomplish a lot more than we actually will. So again, it's not really that we're necessarily deviating from meeting students at their level, but we're also being encouraged sort of to push students through just to impress some of these outside agencies.
Okay. Others? And, if you don't want to mention your own organization by name, you can just use some kind of fictional reference to make your point, to illustrate what you mean by a disconnect between a spouse and actual values. Can you think of something from the headlines?
That whole thing you brought up last week about, or 2 weeks ago, about the ethics commissions, not wanting to be, I forget what it was exactly.
Yeah, in fact, I think I still have the article here. It was the state assembly. Yeah, they didn't really want to be subjected to scrutiny by the ethics commission the way that other public agencies are in the state. Can I still have that? Yeah. I'll have that. Yeah, loopholes for Rhode Island lawmakers. So think about, you know, and it's not always big, but it, you know, but sometimes, you know, it's the small things, but it's kind of a continuum. What it really kind of boils down to is what's the culture of your organization. You know, it's when you think about, you know, this book talks about part of the pathological or the pathologies, I mean, of public organizations stem from public or structure and culture. You know, so the way we're structured, but also then this deep embedded culture that we operate within as a result of the structure. And so what we say we believe, you know, think about political organizations, and you know that we talk about our democratic values, and we uphold the, you know, the Constitution of our states or the country at large. But then the way you see elected officials act sometimes, you know, some of the back, you know, the back deals that are going on. Yeah.
One thing that you just made me think of, safety issues.
Mm-hmm.
All over the fire department, you're always out there worrying about safety, but you look at our own personnel gear. You know, they're supposed to be replaced every 10 years or something. There's stuff that guys are still wearing for 15 years, 20 years. There's no money, so this is that whole safety issue. It's you talk a good game, but you're not really following.
Right, and that's an excellent example, because it's not like anyone is trying to be devious. You know, partly part of the dilemma is lack of resources, scarce resources, and conflicting values. You know, even as a society or even as taxpayers, we say we want our servicemen or we want our firefighters or our police officers to be well equipped, well trained, but then on the other hand, we don't really want to pay our taxes to make that happen. You know, so where we put our money or where we want our money to go in the way of taxes is going to vary based on our priorities. So we want it all, but when push comes to shove, we're not really willing to do it. So we get this kind of discontinuity between espoused and actual values. Okay, so assumption that those in positions of power and higher in bureaucratic structure are smarter and more competent than those in subordinate positions. I know you guys don't really believe that, but you know, there is you know, kind of a historical belief that, you know, well, you wouldn't necessarily be in that position, right, if you didn't have the skills or if you didn't have the smarts to be able to be in that leadership position. So this can be problematic, especially when those in those positions actually believe that they're more competent and that they, you know, they're smarter than everybody else. Now, I don't know that any of you work in organizations where you have those in positions of leadership that actually believe they're more competent than you. Does that happen? Sure. Is there a problem there? Yeah. So, you know, this is an illness, you know, an organizational illness that we have to deal with. It, you know, sometimes it can be pervasive throughout an organization, or sometimes it can just be, you know, sporadic, but it's there. Another pathology is an emphasis on personal survival and avoidance of conflict in a very tumultuous and political environment. So this is something that we all deal with too. If you work in a public organization, there's going to be a political component to it. It can be tumultuous. You know, it's very change-oriented, and sometimes we just say, you know what, I just have to survive. I'm going to keep my head low. I'm going to try to not get in trouble. So we kind of revert back to decision-making that says, I'm just going to do what I need to do to comply. I'm just going to follow policy. That policy might not be good. People might get hurt, but at least I'll be covered because I just need to survive. I just need to, you know, put in my time and avoid conflict, and that's the way I'm going to get my job done, right? So this this may not be your personal experience, but certainly you know people that operate this way in their professional lives, right? Taking defensive tactics to avoid or ignore problems, dealing with problems through short-term solutions. So, you know, again, kind of avoidance, trying to find a Band-Aid approach, a quick fix, just, you know, let's just get this out of the way for now, and not really, and it's kind of related to the personal survival and avoidance of conflict in a way. They kind of go together. Can you give me an example of that? Kind of taking a defensive tactic?
Well,
Short-term solution? Yeah.
when I did the case on Dr. Elders and leaky conduit and all that,
Mhm.
and after reading it, I said to myself, you know, why would you have not done something about this more sooner? And it was almost as if it was a situation, well, you know, yes, I know about this, so, but no one else knows about it, so therefore I'm going to just move forward with this, and yes, there will be situations where, you know, some kids will get pregnant, some kids will get disease and all that, but for the greater good, it'll work. And it made no sense to me why she didn't stop the program and sue the manufacturer, or at least get the money back, and just say we're going to start fresh again with another manufacturer and do this program right. It just made no sense. And unless it was a situation where it was one of those things where, okay, you know, it's a minor situation, but I'm not going to stop the whole program because of it. And it just, to me, the answer was so obvious. I can't understand why she put herself in a situation and put the program in jeopardy like that.
Because there are things that maybe weren't in the case, but things like her professional prestige, the, you know, funding that goes along with it, deadlines to get it done. I mean, if part of it you know, the successful completion goes into her portfolio, there might be opportunities for publication that are going to dry up, and so, you know, and the pressure cooker of having to do the research in addition to everything else, you know, and no, I can't start this over again. It's just, I won't get the opportunity, whatever could have been going through.
Mm-hmm.
And then rationalizing it to say, well, how many people are really going to be hurt? You know, maybe I can. So again, not really taking into consideration all of the components that are at issue to make that decision. Yeah.
So he's working there, he finds this out, and because I had the same questions when I talked about the company that I worked with, and these kids were just being basically neglected from the agency that's trying to help them. And it's like, I would be sitting there going, how can they do this? How can you do this? It's just wrong. I mean, that's how we are. You report it, you do certain things. How like that? What else can you do? And basically, you have to save yourself. But how and who you report these things to? I mean, I know it happens all the time, but what do you?
Again, it's an example, I mean, of someone just trying to rationalize the problem away. You know, minimizing the downside to the decision, to you know, say we can't go forward with this. We need, you know, let's either start again or abandon the whole thing. Yeah.
That's what's really, I didn't choose a study, but that's what's really stuck with me about the syphilis study. Not only can we, you know, argue that there's some serious institutionalized racism,
Yeah.
but just the fact, you know, it's, you know, the trope you even see in pop culture, the scientists who will do anything, you know, in the name of science and avoiding all, you know, emotional or other like human factors. But it's just, that one, I don't know, it really sat with me. Just how foreign, you know, and I think it's an extreme example at that point. But
Yeah, I think you get some of those in these cases. But on the other hand, it's not all that far removed from people rationalizing. Well, you know, think about, you know, at some point you're going to do your own study. It's going to be small, you know, but it's like, oh, you know, I mean, I had one student, and it was kind of innocent, but she's like, I'm not sure if I'm going to get all the cases, and it wasn't Kelly, so I'm not sure if I'm going to get all the cases I need. Can I do something other than what I put on my human subjects research application for going out and getting the cases? I'll try to do something similar, and you know, as her instructor, as her advisor, and knowing that she needs to graduate, you know, that I could have said, yeah, let's just try to find something similar and not tell anybody. But I can't do that. So I said, you know, no, you know, I'm really sorry, but you know, the way you've specified that you're going to collect your data is the way that it actually has to be done, because you're going to compromise the integrity of your study. The results that you get might not be valid because you've got, you know, two different total groups that you're looking at if you go this other route to try to get more cases. And you know, there's just going to be, there could be spurious factors that you know that are going to skew your results. So she's like, oh yeah, I know, but I thought it was worth a shot. You know, but but there was a split second that I thought, oh, can we do this? And then it's like, no, absolutely we can't. And you know, in some ways, when you're dealing with human subjects, you do have to be somewhat categorical. You know, you kind of use the Kantian approach where, you know, it's like, you know, you cannot vary from what you said you were going to do. Now, in the case of the leaky condos, what an alternative is to go back to the HSB board, or sometimes they're called IRB, and say, internal review board, and say, you know what, the whole study is flawed. Here's the reason. I'm going to need to start over. So what you do is then you submit a whole revised proposal, new timeline, whatever, and you know, and it's a lot of effort, and you know, you have to go through the whole process again. But that's the way it has to be done if you're going to modify your study in any way. So, and some people aren't willing to do it for different reasons. You know, you know, some researchers are getting paid, you know, and it's like, oh, I've got to give the money back. I've already spent the money, you know, or I've already bought all of the material. It isn't necessarily that they used it for their own personal gain. You know, they didn't go out and buy a new car, but they hired staff, and now they're going to have to fire staff, or they've already paid, you know, so there are all these other factors that can go into it.
I think there's some like chat.
Some chat going on. Let's see. All right. Yeah, so Becky says short-term solutions are not usually good, but sometimes they're necessary if something else is more important and pressing. As long as they go back as soon as possible to fix the short-term solution and make them long-term, then it's okay. That's where people err, or is this rationalizing? It isn't necessary. I mean, the word rationalizing isn't always a negative. It's not always a bad thing. You know, it's like, okay, I mean, it could be a good strategy to say, okay, let's look for a short-term fix, but realize it's just a Band-Aid, and we really need to address this issue long-term. And if you actually do that, then that's good. But oftentimes it's just it's a way to dance around the problem. And when we think about public organizations and what we deal with in public administration, structurally, what we know is that the problems that we deal with are complex, and they're overwhelming at times. And you start to address this particular part of the problem, but you see you really can unless you tackle this problem and this issue. But to do this, you really need the buy-in of this group. And then all of a sudden, it just seems intractable. And it's like, how do we even get our arms around this problem? You know, and I think about some of the issues that poor little Providence in Rhode Island faces, you know, just from a resource standpoint, and all the things that need to be addressed, it can seem overwhelming and intractable. And so you might get into this situation of kind of dancing around, oh, I'm just going to dance around this till I get out of office, or let somebody else take care of it. Ooh, let somebody else realize that we're going to go bankrupt in a year or something, but I got to get out of here. Did I say that? No. Okay, good. That might not be true, but I don't know. I have my sources. Changing the culture begins with an acknowledgement of the need for an explicit moral foundation and framework for personal and professional judgment. And this is tough. I mean, so changing the structure is one thing. Changing the culture, that takes time. And as the the book talks about, they kind of come together and they go hand in glove. So then what do? You're a public administrator, and this book says practical ethics. So what are some real things that you can do that aren't the typical ways that public administrators have been dealing with issues? And so we're going to look at some of the the stressors, and then how have we been dealing with these problems in public life. Okay. See what time it is first. All right, we'll just get through this one and then we'll take a break. All right, we can add to this list too. So, moral stress in public life. How many of you have ever heard that term, moral stress? I mean, we have stress. But usually we think about, the mental pressure, mental stress, or sometimes it leads to physical problems. Because we're so stressed out that we make ourselves sick. So we have all of these stressors. But moral stress is a concept that you really don't hear much about. But it's something that's beginning to be discussed, not just in public administration, but in organizations overall. Moral stress in public life has many sources, and chief among them is, these are some terms that you hear in org theory, and we'll just go over them to make sure that we're clear. Role conflict. So have you heard that term before? So in the incompatible demands made on a person. So can you give me an example of like role conflict? Somebody, anybody, please. We'll kind of come back to it. Role ambiguity, lack of clarity as to requirements and responsibilities of one's job. So give me an example of role ambiguity.
In a situation where you may have a boss who one week tells you to do something and then the following week tells you to do something completely different and doesn't even acknowledge the fact that they told you to do it the other way the first time.
Okay.
And it just, or maybe even over a period of more than just a week or whatever, but it's just, you do something one way for a while and then they say, no, do it this way. No sort of structure in terms of explaining how to do something.
Okay. Yeah.
That would carry over in terms of like making ethical decisions, lacking. I know the ethical impact statement is kind of like on the opposite end, but really lacking any ethical infrastructure would allow for a lot of discretion, which isn't always a bad thing, but you'd lack consistency.
Okay. Let's go back to the first one, incompatible demands made on a person. So what kind of demands do you have that are made on you on your job?
Reduce overtime costs.
Okay. So you've this is a good one. So you've got to reduce overtime, right? But you've got to respond to emergencies where they exist, right?
And there's requirements in the collective bargaining agreement that require them to demand.
Right. So that's an example of an incompatible demand made on a person. And in nursing, there are some statutes in some states. I don't know if Rhode Island is one of them, where a nurse and this has to do with quality, is only supposed to maybe attend to 4 to 6 patients on a floor. But yet there might be 10 or 20. And so how do you deal with that? Who's going to deal with it? There's also issues around weight of patients actually, and what it does physically to a person's body. And but yet they're expected to maintain their health, and so there's all kinds of issues. So right now, an issue going on in healthcare for workers is the flu's going around. They're sick, but they're not allowed to be obviously at work when they're sick. But there's more patients. There's more people that need healthcare workers to be there, but they can't be there because they're sick themselves. So, I mean, that's maybe kind of a weak example, but I think you get the point on how you can have incompatible demands made on the same person in the same job. You mean, are you talking about, what are you talking about? What, with vaccinations, you're talking about children and getting vaccinated, or?
No, I think it's for every
Healthcare workers? Yes, they're supposed to be vaccinated. And I think there's some organizations you can't work if you don't have your series of vaccinations.
Yeah,
Right.
That's the religious exception, which I think oftentimes will say that. I feel like a nurse comes presenting the flu shot. Say, it's not really to get it.
Yeah, that is an ethical issue because it's basically someone. I mean, if it's not an excuse, and if it's a real value because it's someone's religious value is now up, against the law or regulations. Or,
I thought I ever heard, I forget where I was, saying, oh, I don't have to get the flu shot. Oh, just say it's your religion that you can't get it. No, that's why I did. Obviously, if it's truly their religion and they don't want to get it, then I think that's legit.
Yeah, and obviously this is a really hot button issue right now. But I was reading an article too about like a district in Michigan where they have some of the highest rates. I think they're in a state that also allows just philosophical exemptions, and it's not just the people who comprise. I mean, I think it's a really anti-vaxxers are a very, very vocal minority. But they're noticing that parents will just choose that option just to defer their children's appointments just out of convenience as well. So kind of a big, and herd immunity only works if you like 90% of the population vaccinated. So
yeah, so for those parents, they're using a very short list of criterion to make their decision. And without looking at what are going to be the implications for the other kids, or what is it that what's going to be the total impact on my own child for doing this. So yeah. The Navy requires vaccinations. What else did you say, Becky?
Dr. Norfeld?
Yes.
Hi, this is Becky.
Yeah, you were talking about the Navy?
Yes, the Navy requires vaccinations, for example, the flu shot. As I remember, one time they made my whole command march in formation all the way across the base to the clinic just to make sure everyone would get their vaccination. It's not just go get it as you can and then they forget about it. They will make sure everyone gets it.
Okay, well that's one way to do it. Now, what if you have a religious objection?
I honestly have not seen that before.
Okay.
Not saying it's not out there. I haven't seen it in any of my commands, though.
Okay. I suppose it's possible. I mean,
In the instance of the school, what I think one of the charter schools, like I was reading about that district in Michigan, revised their like admissions policies to make it you have to be vaccinated for like MMR to enroll at the school. With the idea that even if this conflicts with your personal beliefs, you're free to choose. It's not like you're required to enroll your children at our school.
That's right. And I think with the issue of military service, there are some exceptions, but I think you actually have to. I mean, you can't be inconsistent, and because I think it would be easy enough to show that, well, you didn't apply the same standard in these other cases, so it might be a little harder to hold up. Robert Withnow is actually a theologian, but he's a scholar that's been writing on a number of topics. Ethics, one of them, he's been doing it for a really long time. And his take is that we lack a moral framework for making moral choices. So, he says it's not that people themselves are lacking, some moral capacity. It's that there's no framework. That he's saying that we don't actually have underlying values that make it easier for us to make decisions, to make these ethical decisions. So we don't have a framework for making moral choices. So we tend to rationalize our way out of a morally distressing situation. And you're going to see, especially when we look at public organizations, and we already looked at some of the pathologies, but just when we look at the structure and culture and some other issues, that you can see why we don't necessarily have a framework, but that's not to say we can't, but it would be extremely challenging. I mean, and why would it be challenging? It's because public administrators are thought to be, these neutral agents, moral people, but basically not the ones to impose on the public rules, regulations, laws. That's supposed to come from legislators. That's supposed to come from our elected officials. The reality of what public administrators do, as you well know, is very much the policy-making process, rule implementation, development, all of those things working hand in glove, but that's not the perception. So the framework is not there because what's the perception, or the reality has become, has evolved, but it's not actually the way public administration has been set up. And it's not, it's not the way you read about it, in terms of what is the framework? Where are public administrators in relationship to elected officials? You can see all of these wonderful charts and graphs and, how the agency structure, but the reality of how work actually gets done is far and vastly different than the way it reads on paper. So organizational life today tends to diminish and does not nurture the dimensions of human experience and the foundations of human excellence. So Withnow and others say that, our bureaucratic structures, it's not that bureaucracy is bad in and of itself, but the way that we've structured what we do in organizational life and some of the beliefs, the pathologies that exist with that compound the problem, and that what's happening then is our own individual capacity to make good ethical decisions is not being nurtured. And hence, you get what these guys are trying to say, let's provide you with a framework for making decisions. Let's look at all of these ethical perspectives and try to put them together and realize that each of them, constitutes an aspect of our own human nature. And if we practice it, it's going to become a little more natural for us in terms of our decision-making capacity.
Dr.
Tony
Noll,
Moore, yes.
This is Catherine. what you're talking about lacking the moral framework was kind of what I was thinking about in our third question of the module, the one that was regarding the ethics impact statement. And I felt in my answer to that, to kind of connect it to the view, I felt similarly to what you're saying, that an ethics impact statement would be a great idea, but we are kind of lacking a moral framework or some type of consistency to kind of to base that impact statement on, and to kind of make a plan for a future with it. And when we're looking at that question, you know, it was being compared to the environmental impact statements, which of course those are really supposed to link up with the National Environmental Policy Act, which is a U.S. environmental law. But in our case, in public administration, we don't necessarily have such a law to align ourselves with, so we'd be kind of free floating out there without the moral framework, with our ethics kind of, different opinions of different people from different walks of life. So when you reference the lack of moral framework, it makes me kind of think about that third question that we addressed in the module.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I think I did ask you, and then I moved on quickly, but I had asked you basically to look at the pros and cons of the ethical impact statement. What did you think about that?
Right.
Yeah. We can come back to that. Okay, so Toni Morris, another ethicist, 1997, identifies 4 dimensions of human experience. So we have our intellectual capacity, our experience as humans. We have the aesthetic aspect, moral, and spiritual. And then there are 4 corresponding foundations of human excellence. So truth, beauty, goodness, and unity. So these are kind of some universal foundations of human excellence, and they go hand in glove. And see, did I have a page number for that one? Let me get the right chapter. So these dimensions of human experience, and together with the foundations of human excellence, what Morris says is they're keystones of trust and collaboration and are central to moral maturity. So this is how we know, when all of these things, the bottom line is intellectual, aesthetic, moral, and spiritual experience are not being, we're not experiencing them in our organizational life. We might experience them in our personal life in different ways, but the culture and structure of public organizations don't necessarily allow us to experience all of those 4 dimensions. And as a result, the foundations of what we consider excellent, which is part of our capacity for decision making, kind of going back to the virtues, the traits and the virtues that, part of the unified ethic, we're not in a position to really make the best. We can make good choices, but again, we don't have the framework to do that, because in our organizational life, we're not doing anything to nurture and build a framework that allows us to flourish in all of these ways in our human experience. So in short, what we're not really doing is we're not allowing individuals within organizations to become morally mature. So do you understand what I mean by that? It's morally mature, the ability to make good ethical decisions. So moral maturity has nothing to do with one's religion, again. So it would be able to, build trust, collaborate, work for the best decision, not always trying to, think about one's own self-interest. Never forget that you don't want to diminish your own self-interest to the point that you're not, you don't see that you're important, because everyone, self-interest is important, but it's not the primary concern. So when we were looking at some of those pathologies, you're just trying to survive. Sometimes the ability just to, our own self-interest comes into play. And the leaky condos, case. You know, the leaky condom case was an example where the researcher's self-interest was primary. And so you might make an argument to say that her level of moral maturity wasn't really there. Okay. All right, let's take a break before we move on. So it is now, it's about 7:35, 7:36. Let's take a 10, 15 minutes, whatever you need. Get up, stretch. See, some of you are getting a little glazed over, a little tired, long days. I don't know about you, if it's just me, is it stuffy in here, or is it just I have too many clothes on? I have too many layers on. I dressed for -6 this morning, and what's that?
I guess the snow is supposed to move from like 1 to 3 to 3 to 5.
Oh,
So the winds must shift.
3 to 5 in here?
Yeah. It was
Tonight?
Yeah. When on my way over, I came over from Warwick and it was starting to slightly.
Because my phone showed snow starting this evening. I don't know, was it 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, something like that? Is it snowing out there now?
I drove from Bristol and it was like flurrying.
Yeah. Okay. But I didn't think much about it because I thought it was just going to be minuscule, and then by the morning it was supposed to all be gone.
Yeah, crazy. I'm supposed to have rain tomorrow, which is bad because
Oh no,
it gets cold.
It's already an ice rink. I tell you, I'm like, this is how I walk. This is how I walk up my driveway.
Oh, I know.
Holding my car because it's like a slope. And it doesn't matter what shoes I have on. I mean, I really need crampons. That's about the only. That's the only way. Because just that's not working. And all of my pants have salt stains. Yeah, I look like I've been treading through the ocean.
What is it wrong? It's like. Oh, it's how much?
Less than 1 inch.
Oh, wow.
So that changed even from the beginning of class, so I don't know.
Oh, what is it now? It's back to less than 1 inch?
Yeah.
Oh.
Wow, around here.
So
you have to wake up with a sticky head out the window.
The models, I don't know how accurate.
What do they say? Tie a string to a rock and look at it.
Yeah.
It's blowing, it's windy.
Well, it is it's part science, part art.
Yeah.
And, the winds can change, so they do the best they can.
It seems like, sometimes I don't know, maybe thinking wrong, but if you have the framework, but it's people's like attitudes once you get in there, because you can have all the wonderful policies and it's so easy to see their boss or colleagues coming in late or sleep over.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know we're not supposed to. Nobody ever gets disciplined, or most people don't get caught if you do this. So it's almost we make it too easy. Even managers might know you come in and they shrug it off.
Right. So it's part culture, part structure that compounds that issue. And and if the leadership isn't going to step up and be a good moral example, then it's going to be very difficult, because then what ends up is you've got the 1 or 2 people who are they're not going to break the rules no matter what. But then they get ostracized or, kind of left out, like, oh, this shoes or whatever. So it makes it difficult, and then oftentimes good people leave because it's like, I can't work in that environment.
Well, it's funny because I started this company back in June. And the company was acquired by a large corporation, and the smaller companies, they're acquiring, it's a brand new division, and they're acquiring these little places. Well, I walked in here,
even this, considered corporate.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's one strike against me. Even though I interviewed her just out of courtesy, I guess, to that manager, who was the owner of that company. Oh, yeah, they ran in, and when I went in there back in June, it seemed, it seemed nice, you didn't introduce you to a lot, you'd or you'd be sitting in there. And first thing was this woman, you can tell that she, it's almost like when you're back in high school. When the door's open, you better know some person.
Yeah.
She's loud and
Well, my guys will go down and make the decision.
it's almost like she's glorious at first.
Yeah.
And I think she's super insecure.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to know, what are you gonna be doing? I could start saying, okay, so you're probably, I used to do something that got brought out of it later. I used to do some of hers. She's a part-timer. Okay, so I'm like, okay, make her comfortable because she thinks she might be taking that or something else. And the management is changing. But so tight, such a small family, all been together for so long. I'm like the cousin that the parents shipped out there. I still no, it's our last semester. I've still not met my boss.
Oh my goodness.
And so she works in another part of the country. And the snow stopped.
Emotional implications. Yeah, right. So you're trying to, we don't have to. They would have stayed all day. You know what I mean?
The lady that's behind me goes in the back. This is what small. They all live 5 minutes from each other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how's your granddaughter? She's into that. So you find something that
Try to connect with.
Her husband thinks because I'll be doing some of the parts of the ordering for the company. He's a quiet kind of guy, but then when he heard that, like my boss said, ever since back in September, we started doing some of the process. So we're ordering, which is part of his job. Finally goes, now, I can't even place an order because he does supply. You won't acknowledge you. I'm saying kids can't do that. Oh, gotta do this or something. I talked to kids, but I don't know what to do. She had a leadership, thank God. She went, the manager went to for leadership in that class. And when she got back to the school, I was like, I didn't know. Let me tell you, I'm quite frank about a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no,
You didn't.
there was no communication on my side. She's worked for the company for so long. She's 46, still young. It's been working for the same company, but parts she has not had to connect out in other positions.
Mm-hmm.
She's never been a manager.
Mm-hmm.
She had no understanding until she took that leadership. But now I understand more what it means and how the culture is there. And
Well, good. She's opened the door then. She's opened the door for a conversation. Mm-hmm.
But it was like, I mean, they all did.
Yeah.
In some parts, but it's like, it's not, and she even said, you want the work that you do, by your heart. But they even said, good people end up leaving. And, yeah, because I will start looking.
Yeah, because now you can actually have a dialogue now because they've kind of opened the door for that.
Oh, yeah.
So.
I'm like, yeah, we should take some more classes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, there's only one other counterpart in California called she said she never her boss is in Texas and she went to California to the office. She didn't, it was a month before she even knew that the coordinator was her boss. I mean, can you imagine working a job and thinking
You don't even know who your boss is? Yeah. It's pretty wild.
And then when she did show up at her office, she was too busy, never stopped. Hey, let's have lunch. Can we talk? Give us 5 minutes. some of their business practices would have carried over. Why would you start a division? The structure, it works. Why are you starting fresh? And that's what it seems like. Well, we got slowly, but it just, you feel like you have to work harder to prove, like, yes, you know, you can do this, and it's okay to.
I don't know. I don't know what the rationale sometimes is. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was understanding that that is part of.
Yes.
You have structure, but it depends on what's going on individually and.
Yeah, the culture and the lack of, you know, so. Oh, that's all right. I'm just going to grab some water and then. Look, it's 81. No wonder I'm burning up. Downright tropical. Of course, I don't really need to be wearing this, but I don't feel like taking it off.
Hey, let's keep it warm. Shed some pounds off of me. I'll go.
I know. Then we're going to go outside and.
Oh, that's right. I was going that way. I couldn't remember what it's done.
It's hidden. Oh, don't tell me there's no cups. Oh, I'll just use.
It's a treat.
Isn't it nice? Hope there's some water in there. Sometimes they don't. It looks like. Then you just select.
Did you?
Yeah, you didn't. Oh, is that yours?
Yeah, I put
okay.
it. I just wasn't sure.
8?
Is that 8?
Yeah.
Go
That's
find
about
out.
right. Yeah. Yes, if you just go out the door and into the main room, the first door it'll be on your left.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
Yeah, the door is. I think the door's shut, but if you go in there, there's a little.
Okay.
I'll be leaving early because I have to get back to work.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's just when you see me sneak out.
Okay. How early are you going to sneak out?
What's that, about 10 or 9, I guess?
Oh, well, we might all be sneaking out at that time.
Okay.
Who's missing? Give him another second. Before we jump back into the material, I wanted to just go over the paper that's due. The next time we meet is actually going to be it's after spring break, so it'll be the 17th of March, which I believe is the date I have your first paper is due. Yeah, 3/17. And this one is, I've got the syllabus if anybody, I also have extra copies if you need it. But you're going to apply the principles of the Unified Ethics, the one that you've been doing when you've been looking at the cases. So you're just going to use that framework. So you're going to use those questions as your framework to apply that to your own case. So you're going to take, you can use your own organization as an example if you have something similar. So think about just the cases that you looked at for the forums, like about the link. So think about a situation either in your own workplace or one that you know of, or take something from the headlines especially if you don't really want to talk about your own organization, and apply the unified ethic. So basically take those questions, and that's going to be your little subheadings, but then you're going to not just answer the question, but you have to think, okay, what's appropriate about the organization that I'm looking at for asking these questions? And then ultimately what you're going to do is come up with your own determination, your own decision. That's your decision-making process. So, what would you have done? What did you do in that about that issue using the unified ethic? So that's your first paper.
Is that, Dr. Novell, is that using any of the ethical perspectives that we just used in our last module?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. So you're going to just let me get back to chapter 4. So you're going to ask the questions. So with teleology, the questions that you're going to ask: what are the consequences of my action? What are the long-term effects of my action? Does my action promote the greatest happiness? So that's the utilitarian approach. So from the categorical imperatives, looking at Kantian perspective, what principles apply in this case? Can this principle be applied consistently in this case and in all similar cases? Can the principle be considered as a possible universal principle of behavior? Which course of action best exemplifies the ideal of treating all people as ends in themselves? Which course of action best exemplifies the most fully promotes the ideal of a free society, responsible people whose ends promote each other rather than conflict with each other? Now you're going to have to modify the questions a little bit, for your case and for your organization. And you don't have to use every single question for each perspective, but you use some of them.
Because that's actually how you want it laid out, or you want it to be format-wise?
Format-wise, yeah. So, so you just might have like a heading, teleology, which is explain what it is, okay? Act in order to produce the greatest happiness as a consequence. So we call that utilitarianism. So then what are the questions that are going to be appropriate for there? And you can take some of these questions directly from the book, some of the cases. And so they're four. And so that's what you're going to use to make a decision based on the dilemma or the case that you're going to present. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it's really kind of like what we did on one of the questions. I can't remember which one in the module. We took a case
it was
down.
It was question one. It was question one.
Okay.
So, and part of it is you're using that as a guide to resolve the dilemma that you're going to present in your paper. But then you're going to, analyze it a little bit, on how useful was it? Was there any one perspective that was more helpful in coming to the decision that you made? Or were you instinctively leaning a particular way, but then using the whole framework, the unified ethic approach, did you reach a different conclusion, and why? So, that's going to be part of your analysis in your paper. And this paper, is just going to be, it's a short paper, 6 pages in length, and that's going to include whatever references that you also have. Double spaced, as always. 12 font, because, I might start requiring 14 or 16, depending on, I can't read anymore. Yes.
Just for the new program, do you have a format that you prefer that you use, or
What do you mean by that?
for instance, when I was in my political science program, we used MLA. I didn't know.
Oh, no, and I actually have addressed that in the syllabus. I don't require you to switch from one that you're familiar with. You just have to be consistent. So, I use APA, but you can, some of you might use MLA or Trabian or whatever. And so it's whatever you're comfortable with. Just be consistent, that's all. And ultimately, what I want to be able to do is if I want to look up one of your references, I want to be able to find it. So, okay. All right, so again, this paper is due the next time we meet, which is going to be 3 weeks from now, on the 17th, because of spring break. And it's, it's a short paper. And, the challenge will be for you to actually find a good meaty case. And it's got to be meaty enough to where you can really apply the unified ethic and analyze it. And, and I don't want your case to be so obvious that you already, you know what I'm saying, where, well, anyone would have resolved this issue. It's not really an ethical dilemma because it was so obvious how most people would have had resolved the issue.
I apologize for stepping in back in. Where did you say we should come up with a case from? So it can
be from your own organization. If you're not comfortable with airing the dirty laundry of your organization, or there might be sensitive issues why you can't do that. You can take something from the headlines. You can some other case that you might be familiar with. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So, because I know, George, you had asked me, that it might be problematic for you to write about your own organization.
If it's confidentiality with you, I don't have a problem giving you that paper, but to air it on the portfolio, obviously I don't want to.
Right.
I would have
Yeah.
a problem with that.
Yeah. So again, you can write a paper that I'm going to read, no one else is going to read, and then you can choose not to put that up on your e-portfolio, or to edit it in such a way that no one would know, but somebody probably would know because it's you. Okay. Did somebody online have a question? I thought I heard someone trying to ask something.
Yeah, Dr. Norvell, this is Wafa.
Yeah, Wafa, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. In my case, can I just use my imagination?
You wanna invent a case?
Yeah.
Sure. You can do that. Just make sure that it's meaty enough, and if you need to use some guidance, look at some of the cases that are in the textbook to see, you know, what kind of issues are they presenting. So it just needs to be, it needs to be complicated enough that you could actually apply the unified ethic. But,
okay.
But I would say the only danger in writing your own case or making one up is that you're going to be a little bit biased, because when it's a case that you don't, when it's a case from your own organization or from something that you picked out of the news, you're not necessarily going to know right off the bat how you would address the situation. But when you're writing a case, then it might be easier for you to know the outcome without having to.
Okay, I got you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
I'm thinking of a very specific case in my organization.
Yes.
And it's already sort of happened and been dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested in using that specific case to sort of see if I made the right decision.
I think that's perfectly fine. Yeah, and if anyone wants to write their paper in that way, that's good. I mean, that's the whole reason. It's got to be useful to you. So, yeah, that's a good way to do it. Okay. How many of you took the time to take that little, it's not really a quiz, but to find out if you're a type A or a type B personality? Let's see. It was on page 131. Did anybody do that? How many of you did it and are like, how many of you are type A's? So you've heard this before, right? You know what a type A, you've heard that type A, type B. They're not bad, either one of them. It's just, there's a propensity to act in, certain ways. Well, what our authors are suggesting is that really what we want to strive to be is a type E, which is taking the best features of a type A personality and a type B personality and putting them together. So I did it. So I'll tell you what I am. I was thinking I was pretty balanced, but I actually am a type A. So I got 31. So I guess I have some growth in some areas. I wasn't like a total crazy type A. Well, I shouldn't say that, because I used to be a crazy type A. I've been working to. Anybody else want to share? Type A. How many type A's in here? George, okay, good. How many type B's?
What was this?
On page 131.
I know, but the score was like a 23.
A 23. So if your score is 26 or more, you tend toward type A. See, they're tend toward. 23. So you're very balanced. You're kind of. Yes, I will. I was a 31, so I'm not off the charts type A. But there's.
I was a 31 also.
Who said that?
Catherine.
Catherine, I just knew that you and I were in alignment in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting where my type A really showed up, and where other aspects of my personality was a little more collaborative, and all of those things that have to do with temper and irritability and stuff like that. I think areas that I've been working on over the years. All right, moral stress in public administration. So we're talking about, what causes our innermost being to be out of alignment, I like to say. And part of it on page 135 is this idea that, when we think about the classics of public administration, classical organization administrative theory says that, we as public administrators are supposed to be neutral, right? So there's this ethic of neutrality and structure. So can anyone talk to me a little bit about that? So, we're taught that, public administrators, they're not political figures, right? They're not elected. We're supposed to apply, the rules, regulation. We're supposed to implement the policy. We're not supposed to create policy. We're supposed to be neutral agents in government. That, that sounds good in theory, but in the reality is that's not the way it is, right? So when you study public administration, as you all have, you realize that actually administrators, legislators, interest groups, and members of the public, sit down together to craft policy oftentimes, and the environment is very political. And public administrators, this idea that you're supposed to be neutral, but also facilitate cooperation and build trust and apply all of the rules and policies. Talk about that idea of asking that incompatibility issue that we looked at within a person. That comes right to mind. Another issue that causes moral stress is drift, and this word is used intentionally, drift from conventional management ideology to ambiguous administrative practice that includes policy making and ethical perplexity. So this is talked about in more detail on page 135 and 136. And actually, Morgan, and this is from Morgan and Cass, so it's Doug Morgan and Henry Cass, but it goes by Bud. Those were my, in my PhD program, those were my professors, Doug Morgan and Henry and Bud Cass. And they've written a lot about ethics in public administration in particular, but what they talk about is that things have kind of been turned on its head in public administration, where the whole climate is so ambiguous now that the ethical component is that we still believe that this management theory says our main job is to be efficient and effective, right? So that's what we strive for, to do our jobs, to take the resources that we have and to use them in the most efficient manner, so that we can have effective outcomes. That's what we do, and to do that in a neutral way. But that's not actually what occurs, because to be efficient and effective means that you would be making all of the decisions. You would be making, in your mind, the best choices to get those optimum outcomes. But if you do that, then you're not being totally inclusive, are you? You're not including members of the public. You're not holding public forums where you're addressing all of the issues of this interest group and that interest group. So you can't necessarily be efficient and effective, but also be open to all the democratic ideals and principles and values that we're supposed to uphold as public administrators. The other issue in what we find ourselves in now is that we don't really even know sometimes what the issues are. What is it that I'm supposed to be doing? Things are moving so quickly.
Did you repeat that?
Say that again? Is my southern accent coming through, or what I should say, my 8:30, 8:10, I'm tired. I'm not making sense anymore. a mere 12 hours ago, I was in Bristol at a meeting that started at 8 o'clock. Okay, it's just like some of you doing the same thing. Okay, give me an example then of how you're expected to be efficient and effective. So you have all of these benchmarks for success that have been laid out for you. But on the other hand, it could be a controversial issue. There are a lot of players that need to be involved. You don't get to make all the decisions, right? You're the implementer. Can you think of, and there are a zillion examples in public administration of the agency personnel being kind of in the middle of all of this. So you have this mandate, this management mandate, this ideology that says that we're to be efficient and effective. But on the other hand, we work in a very pluralistic environment, right? So there's all these players, there's all these competing values, there are all these competing interests that have to be considered. Not only that, we have to be fair. We have to allow people equal access to the process. We want it to be participatory. Sometimes we're supposed to try to achieve consensus. And how can you achieve consensus? You guys are a little loud back there. Hello? Oh, you're a little loud back there. So how can we achieve consensus then when we're also trying to achieve efficiency and effectiveness? So you as an administrator might know, you know your job so well that, and you're using all of these various techniques to get the best result, but yet you're trying to have this collaborative process to bring everybody in. You see where I'm getting at? How difficult you've got two competing values then that make the job difficult. It makes it hard. It makes it moral in one sense. So this idea that, there's no moral component to what public administrators do is kind of out the window, because the minute you insert yourself in this kind of a situation, which is what you do every day, you're faced with moral judgment, trying to achieve all of these different values that are inconsistent. Managers must make things work in the face of pluralism, okay? So that's what you're supposed to do. I got to make this work. I've got X number of resources. I've got this little personnel. I've got only this amount of time. All of this stuff has to be achieved. I'm going to be measured on all of this stuff. So we're looking at all of these various outcomes. But yet this has got to be an inclusive process. And and we're trying to reach consensus. There are all these I've got to bring all these different political views together and try to do on top of it all what would be in the public's interest. Well, who knows what the public's interest is? That's part of the issue too, right? What I consider what's the best for the public interest might not be what you consider in the public interest. The public is very diverse, but there's this thing out there that we call the public interest. So you can see how, kind of murky and ambiguous and complex, and all of a sudden now our jobs are filled with uncertainty. So managers, this is what Morgan and Duggan and Bud are saying. And by the way, in that program that I was in, everybody was on a first name basis. So yeah, there was no doctor this or doctor that, except for the new ones that came in. I am Dr. Cooper. And they're like, well, not for long. In this culture, you're Phil. It took a while for those guys to kind of get used to that. So that's why I always say to you guys, you can call me what you want. I mean, it's nice, but you don't have to call me doctor. Okay, so Doug and Bud say that there are 3 stages for the shift to public administration, ambiguity, uncertainty, and complexity. They talk about on page 137 that has moved away from this comfortable notion of a conventional management ideology. All right. So ultimately what they're saying is that this shift where all of a sudden leaders, those that are in elected capacity, aren't doing their jobs, and it's forcing public administrators to be in this very uncomfortable position, what it leads to is they call a crisis of administrative legitimacy. Anyone want to talk about that a little bit besides me? What does that mean exactly? A crisis of administrative legitimacy. Yeah.
It's just interesting to me because as I've looked through it around the state and townships and so forth that are led by public administrators or public managers or city managers or town managers, I find that the effective ones are the ones who've been there the longest, and they, in their own rights, tend to be somewhat of politicians in themselves because they're able to win their council members over to follow their lead into implementing policies of the town. My own town manager is very much like that. He's been around for 35 years, and it just amazes me that basically he runs the town and the council is, I'm not going to say subservient, but they go along with pretty much everything that he recommends based on his expertise, based on his experience, and so forth. And that's how I relate to the administrative legitimacy, where really it's building up a trust factor, I guess, to be able to implement your policies, even though really it's the council that's supposed to be setting forth the policies and then having him to follow suit and implement policies. He tends to be the one who initiates the policies and then implements them with their with their consent.
Yes. Yeah, it's very much, I mean, good administrators have been able to finesse it in such a way. It's very much an art. It takes a lot of different skills that you don't necessarily get taught. It's not just about learning the basics of budgeting and policy process and all of those things. It's really, it's how do I network? How do I bring these groups together? How do I act as the mediator when actually I'm not supposed to be a mediator? I'm supposed to be kind of this neutral agent. But which doesn't really exist anymore. So it's public administrators. Sometimes I think of them as sort of the middle managers, which isn't really a good analogy, but in a sense, they're expected to be able to fit into all of these various places, working with the public, working with the elected officials, kind of bringing everyone together, making sure things are getting done, that the budgets are met, the policy process is smooth, the outcomes are there, but yet also done in an efficient and effective manner. And, but then there's all of these various benchmarks, too, for assessing how well it's been done, performance measures and things. And in some ways it seems like an impossible task, which brings us all the way back to some of the, the things that we looked at. And why is it sometimes easier than for public administrators to just ignore this, kind of ethical component to the decision making, or just to say, look, I'm just going to stick to the rules. And, I'm just going to do what I need to do from a regulatory standpoint and let the chips fall where they may, instead of doing the hard work of thinking about all of the implications all the way around, even when there's no framework, because it's not really necessarily in one's job description. The structure isn't, the structure is more of a constraint than a facilitator to help the administrator kind of navigate all of this ambiguity and, you know, kind of ethical landmines that are, you know, throughout the whole process. Anybody else have an example of or a different definition of the crisis of administrative legitimacy in terms of what that means to you? Ultimately, what they're saying is it's, you know, I mean, it's the main source of this moral stress that we can feel in public service.
A lot of it, I think, in my own circumstances, you know, you put together a strategic plan or a 5-year plan for an organization, and when you present that, say, to the council or the administrator, ultimately, you know, the numbers at the end of the day don't support what your plan calls for, and by numbers I mean money, and so a lot of times it's sort of just, you know, while those folks may be asking you as the head of an organization to provide a plan and a vision going forward, once that work is complete on paper, then it's sort of dismissed. And I think as the leader of that organization, it's very easy to sort of get into what you just said and say, okay, well then I'm going to just do what we do and not try and do more, because at the end of the day, it's not really going to happen.
Right. Joe?
Just to build off that, look, one of the perfect examples right now is with the 195 Commission. Here we are, they came out, they spent all this time putting into a strategic plan on how to develop the 195 lands. They had bylaws set, they had budgets set, they had a vision set. Then all of a sudden, what we saw yesterday, Pawsox Park just gets announced. Now what was supposed to be a park that was set in the bylaws to meet a, supposedly it was a federal mandate, others say there isn't, but it was meant to meet a federal mandate. Now that's going to possibly either sold off or that land's going to be given to private developers. It was never meant to be given away because there was a moral obligation bond that we've taken out as Rhode Island to pay for that land. And now you have all elected officials saying one thing, private developers saying another. The 195 Commission stuck in the middle, who's now being told that they might have to amend their bylaws to address this new purchase, and everything that they worked to establish and set for the next 10 to 20 years of development has pretty much been thrown out the window. So they're kind of stuck saying, here we are, public interest, private interest, elected officials, who do we represent, how do we represent? And then at this point, since everything we've worked for is getting changed, do we just kind of fall back and say, you guys want the land, do what you need to do, we'll just take a back seat to it.
That's a perfect example. And oftentimes what happens is who gets the blame ultimately when all is said and done is the folks that are still there. I mean, the commission. It's like, well, they didn't do what they were charged to do, and now look what's happened. We've got an outcome that maybe we didn't want, or people forget, you know, all the details along the way. So that's a really good example. Yeah. You know, and one thing that's always a little bit challenging about a class like this is there aren't any easy answers, and sometimes there aren't any answers. There's just a bunch of questions. There's more questions that are raised, and so, you know, it just helps us to become aware, you know, of, or maybe think about our jobs in a different way, and, you know, we can, we're aware of larger issues that maybe we can't touch, but we can at least in our own development, you know, our own little circle of influence start to work and maybe change the culture. So reducing moral stress. So, you know, here's what they say, and I mean, I know this some sounds so overly simplistic sometimes, but, and some of it's easier than others, but first acknowledge that we have the moral sense to reduce moral stress. Okay, so, you know, not throw up our hands, but that realize that we have the capacity as individuals to start working on this. And we've got, you know, we've got sense enough to do that. And it requires an awareness of the moral strength and complexity of the American dream. And, you know, this idea of the American dream was talked about early on in this chapter. And it's, you know, we say that like, oh, you know, everybody, I've got the American dream, or, you know, people come to this country in fulfillment of the American dream, but we don't necessarily think about it from an ethical standpoint. You know, what does that mean? And Robert Wuthnow was talking about the moral strength and complexity of what that means. So going back, I think it was the early part of this chapter, Wuthnow says it actually is a framework. It's a moral framework because it encourages people to work hard and hope for reward. So it kind of fuses the material part with something larger, you know, something that requires excellence. So, you know, that when we talked about the human experience and also under that the foundations for excellence, it kind of fuses that together. So it's this idea that if you work, hard work is a component of the American dream. You know, we talk about the American dream. Nobody says, well, yeah, I'm waiting, you know, for my ship to come in, you know, where basically you don't have to work for it. Usually when people talk about the American dream, they talk about hard work that goes into, you know, getting that. So at the individual level, strive to become a type E personality. So I talked about that a little bit. You know, it's taking the best of the type A and also the best of the type B and putting it together so that you as a public administrator have the ability to, you know, kind of exercise the best of those leadership components, but also you know how to work with people, you know how to network, you know when to step back, be the servant leader, how to facilitate, how to let somebody else step up when it's necessary. Other important components of the type B, which would be type B, be patient. I mean, I'm sure that all of you in public service know that one of the biggest strengths that you have, one of the most important character traits that you can bring to your job is a whole inordinate amount of patience, right? Because nothing happens very quickly. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of persistence. You know, just, you know, kind of keep working at it and working at it. And when things kind of fall apart, if I was on that 195 commission, you know, to say, okay, now what? You know, instead of just throwing, I mean, it'd be easy just to throw up your hands or to go make a lot of noise with the media or whatever. But sometimes you can't. You're like, okay, well, let's just try to find another approach. Who do we need to talk to? You know, just basically kind of regrouping in a sense. So, you know, they were talking about you've got things to do at the individual level, the organizational level, and also at societal level. So at the organizational level, acknowledge the moral dimensions of organizational life, apply appropriate responses to these dimensions, and include ways to deal with moral stress. In the same way, other stressors, so like, you know, mental stressors, physical stressors, are dealt with in the workplace. So a lot of us, you know, in this chapter started talking out, and actually the earlier chapters in the book, that we never really thought about moral dimensions of organizational life. You know, things are structured a particular way. We tended to compartmentalize. Well, this is how I am personally, but here's you know, the way we act at work. You know, kind of compartmentalize, and sometimes there's inconsistencies with behavior at work versus, you know, personal behavior. Well, I wouldn't really do that in my personal life, but my professional life, you know, we have to make these decisions and we have to do these things. And you know, they would argue to say that's not necessarily the way it has to be, because human beings are not designed to be inconsistent in that way, because it's going to affect our mental health, physical health, and obviously our spiritual well-being and our moral fiber if we are out of alignment. this apply appropriate responses to these dimensions, that's they're not exactly giving you a prescription here on how to do that. So basically it's, it's really doing the hard work of, if you applied that unified ethic and started asking questions, you'd begin to get at the root of what you might do when you have these quandaries, ethical dilemmas, situations at work that need an answer. And then at the societal level, political and organizational change are necessary, and that begins with new priorities of leadership. And so what they're saying here, and this is tough, because what they ultimately say is that it really starts with elected and appointed officials. If you're going to change the culture, and if you're going to change the structure of an organization, you really need them to step up. I think oftentimes about our elected officials in Washington or whatever, and or in our own states, and there's so much infighting going on right now that they've lost a lot of the trust and confidence of the American people, because we just see what they're doing, and you can say, well, are they really doing that for my best interests or for their own best interests? And I think a lot of people feel that way because they don't see a genuine commitment to actually working together to solve problems, and we've got big problems. So, and what's in the headlines right now? This whole fight over not liking what Obama's done, kind of around immigration. So, okay, well, let's get back at him by not funding Homeland Security, the agency. And, it's like, is that really going to build confidence in our system of government? Is that really a reflection of our democratic values? Is that really action that's going to benefit the public good in the long run? So if they were to actually apply some of these questions from these various ethical perspectives to their own quandaries and decisions that need to be made, they might have some different outcomes. But we can only look at it in terms of where we're at. So this one, at the societal level, it's difficult, but it's not something that can't be accomplished, at the local level within particular agencies, where there are always good examples of agencies that have stellar leadership and that are doing, good things, and that have a culture and a structure that really promotes good decision making. Any comments so far on what we've talked about? So here's where I'm going to leave you tonight. I asked you for this Module 3 to read the next chapter also, Chapter 7, Making Choices, and also the first chapter in O'Leary. And I'm going to post discussion questions that are pretty much going to be oriented to Chapter 7 on ethical decision making. A lot of what you have, if you've already taken PA 502, the org theory class, a lot of the decision making, and some of the thinkers like Simon and different ones that are covered there in the little lit review that's in this chapter will be familiar to you. And so some of the discussion will revolve around that chapter and a little bit of O'Leary as you start to read that. So you have 3 weeks, and you've got a paper to do. Do you have any questions for me so far? Is this making sense at all? Good. All right. Well, I don't have anything more for you this evening. I'm so sorry to let you out at 8:35, but I want to make sure you get to work on time. All right, everyone online, have a good evening. And we're going to dismiss class.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Bye.
Becky. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to embarrass you, but I don't think you heard how loud you were. Oh, okay. Oh, it's okay. No, it's okay. I was like, oh, I feel like I embarrassed you. I didn't mean to.
No, because I'm think I'm so forgetful, and I remember something. So I need to tell you forever.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, it's all right.
So we're reading chapter 6 and 7.
Yes, and
Six what was what?
let's see, I think so. Where we're going to cover, and then the chapter 1 and the other books. So this 6 and 7, making
And then
choices.
chapter 1 in O'Leary.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what I had assigned for this next one. Because I don't think I'll check the syllabus, but I don't think I got into this yet. But,
Or 8. No, this is not.
I'm sorry. Must be a short chapter.
Yeah, I think.
Went right by it.
Okay.
Let me check the syllabus really quick before you go.
The next module is 6 and 7 and 1.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. Okay. You're welcome.
My post.
Oh, it's all right.
I just posted today. Well, it was actually just a third question. I had done it earlier in the other ones, and kind of slipped away. I mean, I'm exhausted right now.
No, it's okay. It's all right. I mean, I know because you've still got the
Yeah, so just trying to get
3 children and just getting used to a baby in the house again. Yeah.
Like, I've got the other 2 kids. You know?
Yeah. You had the routine there. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I mean, well, I just mean like my wife's got the baby, obviously she's breastfeeding, and then I got the other 2. We're trying to get my son to a toddler bed right now too, which is just challenging.
Oh,
He wakes up
great.
in the middle of the night. It just breaks your heart. Like,
You couldn't pay me to go back.
well, we closed the door.
But it is fun.
So I took him out, but you just hear him. They have a monitor, like a video monitor, but you just hear him like crying, like pulling the door in a little bit. It just breaks your heart. You're like, oh, come on, just go back to the bed because they'll end up falling back in.
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to go and lay in bed with them, and then you end up falling asleep in there.
Yeah.
And you're all twisted up in the
Yeah,
bottom
it
of bed.
was a little thing. Yeah, exactly. So, but I did.
It's okay. You know, I don't penalize you guys for posting late. I just want you to post. And, you know, I mean, if everybody was doing it and we didn't really have any good dialogue, that would be different.
No,
but
I enjoy it. I mean, I think the forums are great.
Yeah.
Like, even if we didn't, obviously it's because of hybrid class, but I don't know, watch it from other people's views because, I mean, you think everyone would kind of have like similar views, but they don't. You know, that's what makes it so exciting. Like, we were talking about the what case was it? The IRS case.
Yeah.
Bill and I went back and forth with each other on a few things. You know, and
Bill's good at being.
he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was all really respectful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, I like that engagement. You know what I mean? Because it's good to have different opinions.
It is.
You know?
Respectful too. Like some of the thing about the ethical statement versus environmental impact. It's like the girl's like, I think it was Kathy. She was like,
Yeah,
"Well, it's based
Kathy,
on
yeah,
law."
yeah.
And I'm like, oh, duh.
Right.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, like that is such a good point because it's exactly why it makes it so like easy to deal with. Where
Right, yeah, whereas we're coming up with an ethical impact statement. It's
sort of
not.
everybody's own perspective.
That's right.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
how do you actually do that? And, you know,
Yeah, I mean, that's
Good
the
night,
thing.
everybody.
It's nothing.
Good night, Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie.
Good night.
I mean, so what you end up
Yeah.
with are codes of ethics like we all have that are more like the guidelines on how you would expect behavior to occur, but it's not that impact part.
Right.
Yeah, right.
And then that's what I liked about reading it and about how it's not like the code of ethics. It's not if you don't abide by it, you're not going to be punished.
Right.
There's no fear. There,
Right,
you know
there's
what I
no
mean?
fear.
Which I actually kind of like because it's just saying be good because you should be good type thing. You know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It just makes a lot of sense. But,
Yeah.
So.
I wish there was more answers.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it would be
concrete
nice.
answers,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know, it's like do this and you get this. Just,
Right.
yeah, it's tough. So, anyway, well, you guys have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks,
Yeah.
you too.
Take care. We'll see you in 3 weeks.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
That's true.
Now, if we're done with the paper early, which I will because I got to have the asthma stuff. Just an email to you is fine?
Yeah, you can just, and what I'll do is I'll open up, I always forget, but I'll open up a place under assignments in Bridges. You can just drop it there or you can just email it to me either way. Whatever's easier.
Thanks.
You guys have a good one.
So she actually listened. Yes, 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 yes. That's my girl. That's what I'm talking about. Close, close, close.